Thank you and good afternoon. I'd first like to thank Gary, Mona, Steve, and Louie for giving me the opportunity to be here. I also want to thank all of my coworkers and teachers and staff. I'd like to thank my beautiful wife, Sandy, but also I'd like to thank both of my parents who actually have just moved to Shenzhen. They're sitting here in the front row. Thank you for putting up with me as a terrible student. Also, I'd like to thank my students, because that's the real reason that we're here today. So I'm going to embarrass my mom here in a second. Okay, so my father was a career officer in the military. Before he was in the Army, he was a school teacher. Now I'm going to tell you, this did not make a good combination for a lazy student like myself, okay? My parents were very focused on education and physical activity. If anybody have met my mom, you'll know. Okay, we both did taekwondo, martial arts, and things like that. So my father pushed me academically, my mother pushed me physically. Now I'm showing these pictures not to show off, but to actually prove to my students that I did have hair at one point in my life. Okay, I haven't always been this handsome, bald man you see before you. But when I was working on this speech, I was thinking, what was my aversion to school? Why did I not like going to it? Because I remember when I was in kindergarten, I had a fantastic teacher, Mrs. Goodwin. I loved going to school. I absolutely couldn't wait. It was a great environment. She was warm, loving, caring. And then she recommended me for the honors first grade class. That's a pretty big deal, right? Dennis, your son's going to be something important. He should go in this class. It's an honor, right? Well, maybe not so much. So I'm going to tell you, I was not a great student. I really didn't even try. I didn't care about school. I wanted to do martial arts, video games. That's really about it. And I'm sure a lot of my students have the same thing. They come in, I go, what did you do this weekend? Nothing. I just want to play games. It's normal. But what happens between kindergarten and high school? Okay, we're going to do some statistics. So we'll get back to my honors first grade class here in just a minute. So let's do some numbers. For the teachers out there, or parents who have little kids, let's say 4, 5, 6 years old, how many questions do they ask in a day? Anybody have an answer? Average? It's just over 300 a day. Okay, so we have that number here. Now, for the high school teachers here, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, how many questions do your students ask a day? Anybody in there? Rob, you're back there. Anybody? Less than 3. Here. I had to put the arrow so it would actually show up, okay? What happens between kindergarten, first grade, and high school? Now, obviously, the kids learn more, they know more, their cognitive abilities improve, but I believe it's actually the schools and the teachers are not letting them ask questions. They're just giving them information. They're feeding them information. And the kids just kind of say, okay, well, this is how it's going to be. I'm going to sit and listen instead of a back and forth, because education needs to be back and forth. Now, being a teacher is not just being a teacher. You have to be a counselor, a therapist, a coach, and a part-time parent. Now, our school here is unique because it is a boarding school. The students are here 5.5 days a week. They're here more than they're with their parents. So it is vital for the right teacher to be here for those kids when they need us. Very, very important. Now, some of you may know this or not. I used to be a kindergarten teacher, okay? I taught kindergarten before I came to RDF. And a lot of people kind of chuckle about this. Oh, look, it's a kindergarten teacher. But I'm going to tell you, kindergarten is the most important entry into the education system. This is their foot in the door for the first time. These kids, they come from home for the first time, and whatever you want to call it, preschool, kindergarten, whatever it is. This is the first time they are away from their parents and learning in school. If they have a bad teacher, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to have a bad experience. They're going to look at school in a negative way, and it's going to damage them. Okay? You have a great teacher, typically, and I'm not going to say all kids are like this, but it typically will work that way. So this is actually the exact windows to my kindergarten class in Texas, in Coppers Cove, Texas. My wife and I took these pictures a couple years ago. So I left Mrs. Goodwin, my kindergarten teacher, and I went into first grade, the honors class. It was not an honor. It was a destructful, horrible experience. And looking back at it as a teacher, it really makes me angry, to be obvious. So what happened was, we got a teacher who was burned out, tired, angry, and basically a bully. Okay? She picked on the kids constantly. I used to beg my mother, please don't take me to school. Please let me stay home. One of the times, I can remember this vividly, the little girl who sat next to me, pretty little blonde girl, her name was Kelly. She always wore a nice little blue or pink skirt. Her hands are shaking. And she goes, I have to go to the bathroom. And then the next thing I know, she has an accident at her desk, right there in front of everybody. Embarrassment, it was terrible. And I remember thinking, I couldn't believe this was happening. You shouldn't go to school and be terrified in this type of environment. So when I finally graduated by the skin of my teeth, and I'm not joking about that, from the University of Maryland, and I got that diploma in my hand, I remember thinking, I will never set foot in a school again. I am finished. I'm free, right? Why would I think that? Why is it such a punishment to come to school? I had a few teachers that didn't make it a nice trip. Okay, enough about my bad teachers. You see this fat man? This is the greatest teacher I have ever seen in my life, right here. Mr. Brown, about 400 pounds, from Texas. He was my Algebra 2 teacher in 10th grade. Now, my parents can tell you, math was my worst subject. If I got a 70, that was a miracle. So I didn't have a lot of hopes going into Mr. Brown's class. I was really scared, always worried. No matter how hard I worked, it was a D-. So I'd walk in the class and he'd go, Dennis, God, you're huge. Why aren't you playing football? Now I have to tell you, the high school at the time, Coppers Cove High School, is famous for being the worst football team in the state. They lost everything. Why don't you play football? Look how tall you are. You could help the team. It's your duty. Help the school. Oh, I don't do that. I do taekwondo, martial arts. Okay. And then the next day I'd walk in and he goes, I saw you with your girlfriend. You better take her out on Friday night. Movie, pizza, that's what a good guy does. I'm like, why is my math teacher talking to me like this? This is a crazy guy. And then we would have the lessons, and he would start the lessons talking, hey, I went hunting this weekend, or fishing, or hiking, or whatever. I'm like, why is he talking about this? And then he would eventually tie it into the lesson, and we would learn how to do whatever algebra it was that he was trying to teach. I'm like, this guy brainwashed me in some weird way to learn math. And I still, to this day, it's my most hated subject of all. But I loved going to that class. I loved that teacher. Now, I had another teacher, and this was not a formal school teacher. He was my martial arts instructor in high school, Mr. Carl Runk. He was a very personable guy, always had his hand out, hey, how's it going? Pat you on the back. And what shocked me about him was he could remember the names of not just you, but everybody in your family. How's your mom doing? Oh, your mom took taekwondo class last night. Oh, she was great. How's your sister doing? How's your brother? How's this? He was so personable and welcoming and warm. I thought, gosh, I wish I could be like that guy. Just amazing. Now, some of you may know I have a lot of rules in my class. No computers, no electronics, no food, nothing. Not even school bags. You can't even bring your backpacks. You can ask any of the kids here that are in my classes. Everything stays outside. You can have your workbook. You can have a dictionary and a pen. That's it. I don't want anything to distract you. It's key. You need to be focused in class. And a lot of people go, gosh, that's too hard. It's like the army, okay? You can have rules in the classroom and still have a good time. And this is from one of my favorite movies. Discipline is not the enemy of enthusiasm. As long as the students understand, they understand me, I understand them, that is when things flow in the classroom. Now, you can see here, Principal Steve is joining in on my class. This was about 2 years ago, one of our movie line classes. You can have a fun time. Teachers need to be up on their feet, walking around the class, loud. If you would have visited me yesterday, you would have seen me laying on my back, pretending to be dead, and my students are dragging me across the room, okay? Because I'm trying to get them to explain how to do a murder mystery in a novel. You need to be up. You need to do these things and be active. It is critical. So I don't want to upset any of my current students. I can't really see you guys out there. But my 10th grade class this year is by far one of the best classes I have ever taught in my life, in 10 years of teaching. And I'll tell you why. They're loud. They come in with a lot of energy. They argue with me all the time. Where are you out there? I know you're over there somewhere. Argues with me all the time, asking questions, and they'll try to trick me. Teacher Dennis, tell me about when you lived in Germany, because they don't want to do the English lesson. And they try to distract me. But what they don't realize, and what I do like Mr. Brown, is I trick them, kind of a double trick. They're still talking in English. They're asking questions in English. We're conversing in English. It's an English class. Okay, I can take 2 minutes and tell them a story, and they can ask questions about it. And this is what I want, sparking interest and enthusiasm from the class. Now, I'm sure I've been up here too long, and I'm sure my dad is bored listening to me. He always said, don't talk too long. Nobody wants to really listen to you anyway. But I have one more thing before I go. Just recently, in the last 2 months, I got the greatest compliment of my life from one of my current students. I won't mention him. I don't want him to get picked on and people, joke. He came into my ECA and he says, we're talking, about his life and everything like that. And I said, hey, what type of job do you want when you graduate university? And he goes, I kind of am thinking of being a teacher. And that's rather a rare thing for students at RDF to go into. Most of them want to do art, business, economics, law, doctor. Everybody wants to be rich. Teachers are not rich individuals. I said, why do you want to be a teacher? And he goes, because of you. You make it cool. And I still get actually shocked to hear these words from me, the lazy kid. So I inspired him possibly to be a teacher. I still can't believe that. I'm still awestruck standing here talking to you today. So what I'm thinking is, and what I'm trying to get across is, if you're a teacher or even a parent and your kids are having trouble, maybe try a different approach. Maybe try something completely radical. Flip it around. Get up off your seat, move around the classroom, roll around, whatever you've got to do to get their attention, get them engaged in the class. And possibly 20, 30 years from now, maybe one of those students is up on stage giving a speech about how you inspired them. And that, to me, is true flow. Thank you for your time.